I found Betsy lying cold beside the old oak fence line. Legs stiff, eyes dull, a final, unmoving monument to a quiet morning that had just been shattered. And standing right across the narrow county road, sipping from a delicate porcelain mug while clutching a bright red canister labeled Professional Grade Weed Killer, was Brenda Whitaker, president of our HOA. She didn't flinch when I screamed her name, didn't even drop her floral mug, just turned her back and walked inside her perfect, sterile house like a queen concluding a successful execution. My heart didn't just break. It hardened, locking down tight around a core of pure, simple rage. Betsy was more than a cow. I'd raised her from a little, wobbly calf. She was the heartbeat of our small ranch, the rhythmic thump of life on this land that my family, the Holloways, had worked for 3 generations. My son, Jesse, came running when he heard the shout, his 17-year-old face full of teenage sleepiness that vanished instantly when he saw the scene. He didn't ask if she was gone. He just froze, and the question hung in the too quiet air. We didn't need a vet to confirm the cause, not really. I'd seen the chalky white powder mixed with pellets near the fence 2 days before, assuming it was just careless fertilizer dumping. Now I knew better. This had been brewing ever since Brenda and her Greenview Estates HOA rolled into our valley 6 years ago, buying up all the surrounding plots and building their little slice of suburbia. They tried to regulate my life like I was a shrub needing pruning. Last week, Brenda had marched up to my gate, clipboard held like a ceremonial shield, and declared, "Your bovine is in violation of the community livestock clause." I had laughed, literally laughed, at the time, telling her the clause didn't exist when I built my barn, but that thin-lipped smile she gave me as she walked away, that smile has haunted me. Now, it looked like it was dripping venom. The vet arrived, looked over Betsy's pristine hide, and found no illness, no injury. But when I showed him the residue near the fence, just a chalky streak on the grass, his professional demeanor cracked. "If she ingested this, Caleb," he said, using my full name for gravity, "it would shut down her system in hours. It's potent, too potent for accidental use." That day, the HOA's paper trail finally caught up with the truth. Tucked behind my screen door, I found the original violation notice Brenda had delivered, dated a full week before she actually handed it to me. Retroactive enforcement. Illegal, sure, but Brenda had the HOA board members wrapped around her pinky finger, following her lead like little ducklings marching to the pond. She called it order. I called it a power-hungry monarchy, ruling by petty tyranny. But what really boiled my blood was that look of cold superiority she gave me from across the road. No remorse, just the smug satisfaction of a bully who had finally gotten their way. I didn't have solid, courtroom-ready proof yet, but I had motive, opportunity, and a gut feeling that was screaming bloody murder. That night, Jesse saved us. "Dad," he whispered, eyes wide. "Didn't we set the trail cam by the east fence last week to catch that pesky coyote?" We tore out to the post, grabbed the SD card, and ran it on my laptop. The black and white footage, grainy but clear, was instantly sickening. Around 2 a.m., a hunched figure approached the fence line, glancing around nervously. The shape was unmistakable, Brenda Whitaker. She crouched low and sprayed something directly into the tall, dewy grass. Betsy, our trusting, curious girl, wandered over 20 minutes later, sniffed, coughed, and went back for a reluctant second try. It didn't take long after that. I sat back in my chair, the roar of rage finally finding focus. She poisoned her. The next morning, I drove straight to the HOA office, a cheap, beige double-wide with tacky plastic columns, and demanded to see someone. Brenda was there, organizing potted geraniums for Summer Beautification Day. I slammed the notice on her plastic folding table. "You retrodated this. You poisoned my cow. And I have the footage." She didn't even lift an eyebrow, just smoothed her pearl necklace with an infuriating calmness. Now, Mr. Holloway," she chirped, like a villainess from a bad daytime drama. "Those are very serious accusations. You'll need to direct those concerns through proper HOA channels." She handed me a form labeled Dispute Intake Request, 3 pages long, requiring 7 signatures. "You're kidding me," I said, utterly incredulous. "We value process," she blinked. That's when I finally understood. This wasn't about a cow or a clause. It was about power and control. She wasn't just daring me to fight her. She was mocking me. daring me to navigate her labyrinth of bureaucracy. I walked out without filling the form. We buried Betsy near the creek, Jesse and I, placing stones around the mound, silent and heavy with shared grief. That evening, Pops, my grandfather, who had passed the ranch down to me, drove out. He didn't say much until I told him every detail, right up to the camera footage. He sat for a long moment, rubbing his chin, and let out a slow, dry whistle. "Well," he finally said, looking out at the endless fields. "I always said HOA folks were the most dangerous kind. Give him a clipboard and they think they're Caesar. What do we do, Pops?" I asked. He grinned, a slow, weathered grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "They want control? Let's give them something they can't control." He stood up, looking across the pasture. "We're bringing in the full herd." I laughed, a sharp, dangerous sound that felt liberating. "All 30 head. Every last one," he nodded. "We're going to educate them on the power of real agriculture. Mud, manure, and all." The next morning, the silence was heavy, like the air before a storm breaks. Jesse was already up, leaning against the barn door, his easy grin replaced by a grim, focused determination. Pops had already secured the flatbed from his brother, Uncle Earl, along with 4 extra steers. "Says we can borrow his guys," Pops chuckled, "as long as we promise to send him back a salt block and 1 good story." I knew where the weakness lay, in Brenda's obsession with rules. I dug out the old binder containing every HOA document since its incorporation. Tucked inside was the original charter, the one Brenda had fought tooth and nail to rewrite into a dictatorial manifesto. But in her haste for control, she'd left a beautiful, gaping hole. Page 13, Section 3. Temporary agricultural demonstrations allowed on communal property, with 3 days' notice provided the purpose was educational and non-commercial. No limit on animal size or quantity. I underlined it twice, made 20 copies, and by 10 a.m., those flyers were taped to every mailbox, lamppost, and on the HOA community board. The note at the bottom was simple: "Join us for a weekend celebration of rural heritage, featuring real cattle, educational materials, and hands-on activities." Brenda's reaction was instant. By noon, she'd called an emergency meeting in the cul-de-sac, waving my flyer like it was a terror threat. "This is absurd," she shrieked to a dozen concerned neighbors. "He's turning our residential area into a barnyard carnival." One neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Palmer, timidly pointed out, "But Section 3A says." Brenda cut her off, citing tomato-growing workshops and scarecrow tutorials, not stampeding cattle. We didn't attend her meeting. Instead, we spent the afternoon preparing the field, hauling portable fencing, hay bales, and the tools of chaos. Pops arrived mid-afternoon with his diesel flatbed and 3 huge, laminated signs that read, "Caution, Livestock Learning Zone." The plan focused on precision. The target was the HOA Common Green, the ridiculously overwatered, freshly sodded strip Brenda called the pride of Greenview Estates, complete with a useless fountain and 2 decorative benches. At 4 a.m. sharp, we loaded the steers. By 6:45 a.m., we had the fencing up, the hay laid out, and over 20,000 pounds of snorting, chewing justice standing ready. Pops hung our official educational materials on the rails, brochures on traditional grazing methods and soil aeration. At precisely 7:15 a.m., Brenda stepped out of her house in pink slippers, clutching her mug, and froze dead in her tracks. She ran across her lawn, arms flailing. "What is this, Mr. Holloway?" she shrieked. I walked over, clipboard in hand, giving her my best, most polite rancher smile. Agricultural Exhibition, Brenda. Section 3A. Fully documented. Saturday to Monday, Livestock and Land Use Education Days. You're welcome to join the walking tour. She glanced at the laminated signs, her eye twitching violently. "You'll be sued. You'll be run off this land." The board approved it. I lied easily. Silence is approval in the absence of a formal objection within the 3-day period. "You failed to respond to the notice." She spun on her heel and stormed back inside, only to return with her husband, Gary, who looked terrified and was holding a garden hose nozzle like a weapon. The cows didn't wait for the litigation. They started pooping, rubbing against decorative shrubs, and one, a steer we called Boomer, accidentally crushed a solar light into muddy shards. The rain clouds that had gathered overhead finally broke, and the downpour began. The common green, already soaked from Brenda's excessive sprinkler use, instantly softened. And then, the real fun began. Cows, it turns out, don't respect HOA boundaries. One leaned too hard on the pin, snapping a post, and wandered straight into the courtyard where Brenda had placed her 6 pristine ceramic gnome statues. By 9 a.m., 4 gnomes had been trampled, and the 5th was currently being licked by Boomer, who clearly had zero appreciation for lawn art. Neighbors, initially hesitant, started peeking out. Some brought chairs. Pops just strummed his banjo louder. The climax arrived when Brenda, wearing expensive mud boots, stepped into the soggy field, waving her arms and yelling. One of the cows, Princess Buttercup, turned slowly and stared her down. Brenda raised her hand. Buttercup lowered her head. A tense, hilarious standoff. Brenda stepped forward, trying to be intimidating. Buttercup matched her step, and with a loud, sickening squelch, Brenda's foot sank ankle-deep in sludge. She shrieked, lost her balance, and fell flat into a mixture of mud, cow patty, and turf. A chorus of laughter rose from the onlookers. Even Jesse doubled over, holding his side. I walked over, patted Buttercup, and whispered, "Good girl." That evening, as the cows rested peacefully in their squishy new pasture, Pops and I sat on the porch. "Think she's done?" I asked. He took a long draw on his pipe. Folks like Brenda don't know how to lose quiet. They only know how to double down. By Sunday, the common green looked less like a lawn and more like a bovine amusement park. It was a lumpy topography of hoof craters and chewed shrubs. Karen reappeared in rubber boots and rain gear, brandishing a folder. "Mr. Holloway," she hissed through gritted teeth, "your exhibit is in direct violation of subsection 14 regarding property damage and public health hazards. Vacate immediately." I pointed to the laminated banner, scheduled until noon tomorrow. Section 3A, remember? As she spun to leave, her boot stuck fast in a muddy rut, forcing her to hop out of it like a frustrated stork. The boot remained behind, slowly sinking. Meanwhile, the Bessie Memorial Barbecue was in full swing, hosted by neighbors who had once dreaded HOA events. Kids played with hay bales, and Pops gave an impromptu talk on ruminant digestion. Then came Brenda's next shot, the sprinkler system. The automated irrigation system suddenly fired up, spraying high-pitched jets of water directly into the herd. Cows scattered. One steer, hit in the flank, galloped directly toward Brenda's cherished gardenia patch, trampling every single blossom before stopping to chew on a string of solar fairy lights. Brenda shrieked and fumbled for her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff." "You can't protect them now." I just tilted my head. "You mean the same sheriff who lives 3 blocks down and stopped by earlier for a photo with Princess Buttercup?" She froze, knowing she was utterly exposed. That afternoon, she sent a final letter demanding an emergency meeting that evening to terminate the demonstration, rallying her cronies for an ambush. I showed up with Pops and Jesse, armed with our documents and a poster titled "Bessie's Legacy, a Community for All Species." Brenda opened the meeting with a dramatic gasp. "Neighbors, I come to you as a victim of sabotage, of betrayal, and of cloven hoof tyranny." She clicked through unflattering photos of cow pies and her own muddy face. When it was our turn, Pops delivered a calm, devastating speech about how Brenda had manipulated the charter and how her obsession had poisoned more than just grass. Then, Jesse projected the trail cam footage, not just of Brenda spraying the fence line, but of her sneaking onto a neighbor's property late at night, measuring their lawn height with a flashlight. Gasps filled the room. Then Jesse played the video of kids laughing, petting the cows, and learning. "That," I said, stepping forward, "is what this was really about. You want to ban that. You want to erase every bit of life that doesn't fit your landscaping magazine." The board voted. 3 in favor of letting the demonstration continue, 1 abstained. Brenda stormed out, muttering threats about nuisance ordinances. But she wasn't done yet. Just before midnight, we heard the screech of her sprinkler system. But this time, it wasn't water. It was a clear liquid that glistened under the moonlight, a nasty mixture of vinegar, ammonia, and something synthetic. A chemical flow that could burn skin. We ran across the lawn, our flashlights catching her standing behind her hedge, directing the spray. She tried to run. Her boot caught the hose. and she fell face first into her freshly mulched flower bed. We snatched the hose. Pop stood over her, his voice low and hard. I once knew a rancher who tried to fix a problem by poisoning it. Lost his herd and his license. He learned one thing. Nature always bites back. We called the deputy. He showed up at 1 a.m., took statements, and shook his head slowly. "I've seen a lot," he muttered, "but I ain't never seen a woman try to chemical bomb a cow after bedtime." He wrote up a formal incident report and told Brenda to stay off the public green. She didn't argue. Her eyes looked empty, like her little kingdom had finally slipped too far away to grasp. The cows slept peacefully that night. The quiet that descended wasn't Brenda's enforced silence. It was the peace that comes when the truth finally surfaces. On Monday morning, the board called another emergency meeting. Brenda wasn't there. The board president, Clark Hughes, announced she had submitted a temporary resignation. The vote to accept it and proceed with new elections passed unanimously. No speech, no defense. Her grip was finally gone. Outside, Tim Ellis, one of Brenda's closest allies, approached me. He looked pale and ashamed. "That herbicide," he whispered. "It wasn't the first time. I helped her get it a few weeks back. I didn't know what she planned, but I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to get dragged into her war." "You helped her get the stuff that killed Betsy," I stated, letting the words hang in the air. He nodded, defeated. "I'll testify if it comes to that. And I'm resigning from the board." This whole thing got out of hand. It wouldn't bring Betsy back, but it was a start. The county later confirmed Brenda would face a heavy fine and a formal warning, enough to stick to her record and keep her away from community authority for good. 1 week after the herd had gone, the common green was drying out, a patchy, muddy testament to the battle. The new board, led by a sensible young couple, immediately removed 5 of the most arbitrary regulations, including the color matching clause for porch chairs. Their second act was to propose a seasonal community education event, open to any resident with something worth sharing, the Bessie Clause. We finished repainting the small wooden sign Pops had carved. It read, "Bessie's Corner," in memory of one good cow and a whole lot of truth. A few days later, Uncle Earl dropped off Princess Buttercup, not alone this time, but with a new calf, a skittish little thing with big eyes. We named her Justice. Fitting, I thought. The board approved the request for temporary grazing in the lower field as a living educational exhibit. No one protested. I asked Pops one evening what he thought it all meant. He just looked out over the ranch, where the sun was setting, turning the drying mud to copper. "Sometimes, folks think power comes from being the loudest voice in the room," he said, taking a slow sip from his thermos. "But real power comes from knowing when to stay seated and let silence speak." He nodded toward the small, wooden sign where Betsy was buried. "She started it, you know. Not Brenda. Betsy. She made it all real." I looked at the calf, Justice, snuggling close to her mother. The land was healing, not in policies, but in people, in how they chose to live beside one another, not under one another. But here's the thing I want to know from you. Tim Ellis helped Brenda by the poison that killed Betsy, but then he came clean and resigned. Should he be forgiven by the community for trying to make it right? Or is his initial silence a betrayal that can't be washed away? And if you had a loophole like Section 3A, would you have sent the herd? No. Wing the damage it would cause to prove a point? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Hit the like button if you think Justice the Calf is a pretty good name, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up to the HOA clipboard dictators.